Welcome back to the Aubergine Chef. Today we'll be making Buche de Noel, or a Yule log cake, which is a traditional cake found during Christmas time. Now, the Buche de Noel, or Yule log cake, is an example of a roulade. Other examples include pumpkin roll, vertical layer cakes, and jelly roll sponge cakes. And the idea of a roulade is that it's just a rolled up cake. So why don't we go ahead and get started. So in this bowl, I have 7 1/3 ounces of egg whites already weighed out. Now, I took a paper towel, dampened with a little bit of vinegar, and wiped out the inside of it before I added the egg whites. And what that does is it cleans up any fat residue remaining on the inside of the bowl, which can prevent your egg whites from whipping up to a nice peak that you're looking for. And just because you've cleaned your bowl doesn't necessarily mean that it's fat-free, because soap is considered kind of a fat, and so even if there's like a little soap film, it can prevent your egg whites from whipping up. Same thing for your yolks. You want to make sure you separate these egg whites as cleanly as possible. So if you need a video on how to separate eggs, I have a video on that. You want to have 5 1/2 ounces of egg yolks also weighed out. Now you're going to need more egg yolks than you are going to need egg whites. So you're going to need about 7 to 8 eggs, and then for the whites, but then you're going to need like 9 to 10 eggs for your yolks. So just keep that in mind, and don't worry about if you feel like you're going to end up wasting your egg whites, because you're not, because we're also going to make the Swiss meringue buttercream, which uses a lot of eggs, or egg whites, and you're also going to use some egg whites for meringue mushrooms. So hang on to your extra egg whites in a bowl wiped out with a little bit of vinegar. In this bowl, I have 6 ounces of all-purpose flour sifted together with a little bit of salt. And then we're also going to add 2 portions of granulated sugar to our egg whites to turn it into a meringue, and to our egg yolks to turn it into ribbon stage egg yolks. Now, I don't slowly drizzle in my sugar to make my meringues anymore, ever since I read that blog post by Brave Tart where she just adds it all in and just whips it up. And so I've tried it since then, and it works perfectly fine. You still get nice stiff peaks, and you save yourself a lot of trouble a lot of time. So we're going to go ahead and start whipping these up. Now, you do want to whip them up immediately. You don't want them to sit around with the sugar hanging out, especially your egg yolks, which can chemically cook and not necessarily curdle, but get kind of grainy, and you don't want that effect. So make sure you start whipping them up immediately after adding the sugar. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 4 1/2 ounces of granulated sugar to our egg whites, and then we're going to whip them up to about medium stiff peaks. Alright, so our meringue looks like it's just about finished. We can check the peak stiffness. We just take our meringue on the beater and just hold it up like that, and you can see that it's got a slight curve to it. So this is a pretty good medium stiff peak stiffness. So we're going to go ahead and scoop this out, place our egg yolks with 2 1/2 ounces of granulated sugar back into the bowl without cleaning it out first. Alright, and then we're going to beat these egg yolks until they reach ribbon stage, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, just real quick, I want to show you what ribbon stage egg yolks look like. So when you pull the beater out of the egg yolks, we're going to form these ribbons that start to pile up on top of themselves. And if the ribbons hold their shape for about 7 seconds, then that means that we've reached ribbon stage egg yolks. And they're holding it about for 7 to 8 seconds, so we're good to go. Alright, next we're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and you can just eyeball that in. Just mix that on a medium-low speed, and then kick up the speed until it's all incorporated. Alright, so you're going to scrape down the sides of your bowl, add in your 6 ounces of all-purpose flour with that pinch of salt in it. Bring it up, and then on low speed, just kind of stir it in, and then kick up the speed slowly until it's all mixed together. Alright, when you take out the mixture, it should be a little bit stiffer and a little bit thicker like this. We're going to go ahead and fold in our meringue now, a little at a time. Start with about 1/4 of it. Put that right in, and now we're just going to basically kind of roughly fold that in. I'd say gently, but I'd like to try and see you be gently with a thicker batter like this to start off with. And what we're doing is we're lightening up that heavy, thick batter. And we're lightening it up in stages, because the first couple of stages we're going to lose a lot of those air cells that we worked really hard to put in. But every time we make it a little bit lighter, the next batch will lose fewer and fewer air cells. So before your egg whites are completely incorporated, go ahead and fold in, or throw in another scoop of that meringue to continue folding. So we're going to go ahead and add in all of our meringue. Alright, so here's our finished batter. You can see it's a little bit lighter in color, a lot fluffier and bigger in volume after you've added that meringue. Now we're going to go ahead and prepare our sheet pan. Now I've got a half sheet pan here that measures 13 to 18 inches. I just put a little piece of parchment paper on it, and then we're going to grease it with some pan release. And I want to spread it a little bit more evenly with this. And the pan release is going to, of course, help the parchment paper release from the cake after we're done, but it's also, hopefully, going to hold it in place. And I don't want to put it on the bottom because I don't want it to accidentally become sticky and then, you know, do the opposite of what it's supposed to do. If it moves around a little bit, it's not the end of the world. So we're going to go ahead and scoop our batter. This is kind of like your last chance to kind of mix in any streaks that you see at the bottom of your bowl. You want to go ahead and spread it out as evenly as you can because it's not really going to spread a lot during the baking process. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and bake this at about 380 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to bake it for about 15 to 20 minutes, just until the knife inserted into the center of the cake comes out clean. You really want to be careful about over baking it because the longer it stays in the oven, the more likely it won't roll up. Alright, so here is our roulade cake out of the oven. We're going to go ahead and flip it over and roll it up. So what we're going to do is, now remember, it's still hot. We've only let it rest for about 5 minutes, just until the edges start to pull away from the sides. And so we're going to go ahead and just help that along with a butter knife. Okay, once we've got our edges nice and loosened, we're going to take some powdered sugar and a sieve, and we're going to just sprinkle that on top. Okay, we're going to take a non-terry cloth towel or some paper towels and lay that on top. Take our sheet pan, and then we're going to use the brownie method to release the cake. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this whole package, let's clear some space out of the way. Alright, we're going to take the whole package, flip it over, and then remember this is still hot and it should pop right out. Be careful while you take off the parchment paper. Just peel it back. Alright, and keep in mind that you can do 2 smaller Yule logs if you wanted to. You could do like 2/4 sheet pan size ones if you really wanted to. Now we're going to take some more powdered sugar, dust it kind of heavily on this side because this is going to be on the inside of the roulade and you want to make sure that it doesn't stick. And that's what this powdered sugar is going to do. So we're going to start from one end, take the paper towel, and just kind of roll it up tightly like a sleeping bag. And this is going to help it roll better once we're ready to start using it or decorating it. So what we're going to do is we're going to let it cool off like this. Try to keep the seam side down if at all possible so it tries to get rounded out. Worst comes to worst, you can always trim it off. Now because it is rolled up, it's going to take a little bit longer to cool off. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and make our meringue mushrooms while our cake cools down. So you're going to need 100 grams or about 2 large egg whites. Alright, we got them in this bowl, wipe that again with a little bit of vinegar. And then we're also going to need 100 grams of superfine sugar. Now superfine sugar is great, you can purchase it in whatever, but it's another ingredient you're going to have on hand. So all you need to do is take 100 grams of granulated sugar and just process it in a coffee grinder. Sugar is much, much finer, almost like powdered sugar. To that, we're going to go ahead and add in a quarter teaspoon, that's a very big difference, I think, of cream of tartar. And that cream of tartar is going to help make our egg whites super light and fluffy. And then we're going to go ahead and just add this whole thing right into our egg whites on this mixer. Now I'm using a smaller mixer because my other mixer is 6-quart and doesn't quite reach the bottom of the bowl with only 2 egg whites. So we're going to go ahead and whip this up to pretty stiff peaks. So you definitely want your egg whites to be on a stiff side. It's a pretty good sign when you're clumping up in the whip like that, right when you take it out. So we're going to go ahead and shake it out, mix that back in, and looks like we've got a pretty stiff peak right there. So we're going to go ahead and roll with this, and you can see how much meringue it's made with just 2 egg whites. Alright, so in a smaller bag, about a 12-inch piping bag, you want to reserve some of the meringue, about 1/4 cup, a little bit less. You really don't need a whole lot. Just about that much, and that might be even a little bit too much. And we're going to set this aside. Then in another larger piping bag, if you got it, 18 inches or bigger, with an 808 Ateco round tip, and there you go, round tip. And we're going to go ahead and just scoop in as much meringue as we can get in here without overfilling it. So we're going to go ahead and start piping our mushrooms. So I'm going to start up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold the piping tip about a half of an inch off the parchment paper. And then we're going to just start piping And we're going to just slowly go up just a little bit. And that wasn't a really good example. Let's try that again. Hold it off about 1/2 inch. Start piping, slowly move up. And then stop piping. And then just kind of twist off to make a round top. About 8 caps in, you want to go ahead and start piping some stems. And so the pipe a stem, you're going to hold it about 1/2 inch off the parchment paper. And then you're going to start moving it up kind of quickly. And you want kind of a cone column shape. It's okay if it has a little bit of a peak. It's not a huge issue because you're not going to see it any longer once you use it. And you're going for about 1 inch, 2 inches in height. And these guys aren't going to spread a lot, so you don't have to worry about keeping them too close together or anything like that. But you do want to pipe more stems than you think you're going to need because sometimes the stems will fall over. And you want to make sure you have at least enough stems for your mushroom caps. If you have more stems, it's not that big of a deal. But it's kind of depressing if you have more caps and less stems. So this is way more caps than I'm probably going to end up using. But we're going to go ahead, and I've used up pretty much all of it, so don't worry, I didn't waste anything. So we're going to go ahead and bake these off. Now, if you have a little bit of issues with some peaks, like say the first one or this one over here, wet your finger just a little bit, and then you can just push it down as you like. Don't get your meringue wet, because you're just going to end up melting it. You just want enough so that way it doesn't stick to your finger. So we're going to bake these in an oven 200 degrees, 180 degrees, pretty low, for about an hour. Now you don't want to do it too high because they'll crack and brown. Your goal is to try and keep these as white as possible. So know your oven. If your oven runs hot like mine does, make sure to go at least under 200 degrees. Alright, so our meringue mushrooms are about to come out of the oven, probably about 20 minutes or so. They weren't quite ready yet. So I want to go ahead and show you. I've already made my Swiss buttercream for this cake. Now I have a video on that, so you can look at that video for if you want to learn how to make Swiss buttercream, or you can use your favorite icing. Now what I like to do is take some of the uncolored icing. So this just has cocoa powder. The brown icing just has cocoa powder. And I like to use it to prep my cardboard by just spreading it on with an offset spatula, just so it looks like a snowy landscape or whatever. You don't have to do this. You can just use your plain cardboard. This is a 12-inch cardboard. You could possibly use a 10-inch one. It might be a little tight. But anyway, I just like to cover it up. Then I like to set some aside. I wanted to save more than this aside, but I forgot to set some aside before I added the cocoa powder. So this is all I could scrape out before the cocoa powder contaminated all the icing. So hopefully this will be enough. You're going to use a little bit of this for decorating. If you want to add like leaves and stuff like that, then you're going to want to save a little bit more. You really don't need a whole lot. The buttercream that I recommend, or the amount that I recommend, is over 3 pounds. And that's way more than you're probably going to need. But just because everybody likes to decorate theirs a little bit differently, I wanted to give you some leeway room. So you're only going to probably need about half of this, maybe 3/4 of this to ice your cake, if that gives you an idea. Alright, so while our meringue mushroom is finished off, we're going to go ahead and fill our cake, because I'd like to put it in the fridge to cool off. It's just a teeny bit warm. I'm alright with that. Okay, and you're going to see it's starting to want to curl up on its own, which is good because we want it to be a little bit like that. Sorry, I didn't realize I was in the center. So you can see it's still kind of curling up. Alright, so then just to ice the cake, we're just going to take some of the icing and place it right into the center. And we're just going to start spreading it out. Now, if you notice that your cake is kind of tearing or whatnot, especially along the edges, you can trim the edges first before you do this. Okay, we just want a nice, even layer, semi-thin. We don't want it super thick. And now we're going to go ahead and start rolling it up. Okay, and don't worry about a tear here or there. You're going to cover it up with icing anyway. So you can see our log. We're going to go ahead and put this on sheet pan, and I'm going to put this in the fridge for about 30 minutes to 60 minutes, basically until my mushrooms are done. So the icing is nice and firm because I want to make sure I can cut nice, clean slices off the edges. It's not super imperative. If you don't have time to chill it in the fridge, your sides might get squished a little bit while you're cutting it, but it's still workable. Okay, so here are my meringue mushrooms out of the oven. Now they're baking a little on the softer side, so you can see they're still a little bit, they look sticky. Oops. But they're actually dry on the inside, so we're good to go. So they've actually been in the oven for about an hour and a half, just because I was just a little bit nervous on how soft they were. But after you can pick them up and move them around and touch them, it's not a big deal. So sometimes the bottom will crust up nice and hard, and sometimes it'll come out like this. Either way, they're fine. They look okay to me. So what you want to do is take one of your meringue mushrooms, and they shouldn't be hot. Even though the pan is hot, they shouldn't be. And all you're going to do is take a knife and just carve a hole into the center. Just like that. Okay? And then using your reserved meringue, just pipe into the hole, kind of like glue. Take one of your stems, so you can see this one baked a little bit firmer on the bottom. And you just want to stick it right into there, just like that. And we're going to bake it off upside down, just like that. We're going to put it back in the oven, same temperature, 200 degrees, for about 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes, basically until the meringue that we're using as glue has dried and set up. All right, so I didn't realize that the camcorder wasn't recording, of course, and I've already cut off all my edges, but I know what I can do. So I have my chef knife sitting in some hot water in my sink, and I've already cut 3 edges. So I cut off this side to kind of cut off a clean edge that we can use as a snack, and then I cut off about a 2.5 inch piece along this edge to use as a side branch. And just to give you an idea of how it cuts, I'm going to just go ahead and trim this off. You don't have to cut this off, because what we're going to do is we're going to put it against the edge and cover it with icing so you don't see it, and that way you get more cake to serve. But because the recorder wasn't working or wasn't on, I wanted to show you how nicely it cuts. So we have some super hot water on the sink. Dry off your knife, and then just kind of give it a nice clean cut all the way through, and then that'll be the inside of your Yule log. So if it doesn't come out super clean, and it happens, like this one side's a little bit messy, you can just patch it up a little bit with a small offset spatula. Now, icing a Yule log is a lot easier than you think. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our Yule log, position it on our 12-inch cake board like this. Notice that it has the icing on it. I didn't let the icing sit up in the fridge, I just let it go. Then we're going to take our side branch, put it on just like that. Maybe the other side's a little bit nicer looking. Let's flip it around. I guess that is the advantage of doing both sides. Okay, now I have my chocolate icing in an 18-inch piping bag fitted with an Ateco 805 tip. So it's kind of a medium-sized tip. And what we're going to do is we're just going to just ice our cake using our tip. So what we're going to do is you want to start on one end, but so you can see better, I'm going to do it on top. You just want to pipe long rows of icing all the way around the cake. Now for this inside part, right here, come to the side so you can see, we're going to just fill it in with lots of icing, so that way it looks like one uniform piece. And then we're going to ice it just as if it were cake. Now that we have our caked ice, now if you like it like this, and it looks pretty loggy, you could use it just like this. But what I like to do is take my offset spatula and smooth it out. Okay, and then smooth out with that kind of rough texture. It kind of still looks like a log. So there's another way you can finish it. Or finally, you can take a fork, and this is what a lot of people like to do because it makes it look more like wood, is take their fork and just drag it along the icing. And kind of do some swirls, because you know that logs aren't perfectly straight with their designs. Every once in a while you want to clean up your fork so you're not clumping the icing anywhere. And then this is how I like to finish my cake. I think it makes it, I don't want to say more realistic, but it gives it a little bit more character, a little bit more depth. Alright, now if you want to at this point, or you can wait until you put your mushrooms on, it depends on how you want to finish them, you can dust it with a little powdered sugar. This will make your ridges kind of stand out more and make it look like a snowy log. Try not to go too heavy. And then, taking that reserved white icing, if you remember to save some, like I almost didn't, you can go back, do little puffs of white, cut out this little ridge right here, puffs of white where it meets to kind of make it look more like it's been in the ground for a while. And then go back with a small offset spatula and kind of touch it up. So all I'm going to do with my offset spatula is just kind of smooth this out to kind of make it look more blended with the cardboard. So now we're going to go ahead and pop these little mushrooms onto our cake. So wherever you'd like them to go. Use them to kind of hide your mistakes too, if you'd like. Now if you want to, before you put them on here, you can dust them with a little cocoa powder or use a brush, a paintbrush, and kind of smear it on to get a kind of smudged look. But I would avoid doing it on the board just because you don't want to mess up your snow. And also, I'm not sure if I want to do it on these just because, you know, it's white snow and it's like, well, when did they get dirty? Wouldn't they have snow on them too? So since I'm not putting snow on them, I'm not going to put cocoa powder on them either. All right, and then there's our finished Buche de Noel cake. All right, so that's how you make the Buche de Noel or Yule log cake. Remember, you can customize this almost any way you can. Really just stick to the cake, and any icing that you want to use should work out fairly well. Again, I used the chocolate Swiss buttercream. I made it extra chocolatey by adding a lot of cocoa powder. So the average recipe uses 2 ounces of cocoa powder. I think I used 3.5. And I did a blend of dark cocoa powder and just regular cocoa powder, like I don't want to call it milk chocolate because it's not milk, but you know what I mean, the less dark version of it. And that way it gave it a nice deep color, because sometimes the regular cocoa powder kind of looks like reddish, and all dark looks kind of grayish and not as appetizing. So a nice blend. Almost 3, maybe 2.5 ounces of it was regular cocoa powder, and 1, maybe less than that, was dark, because it does have has a deep grayish look to it. And again, you could do it like a lighter color if you want to do a green board instead of a white board for the snow. And then you can do like, I don't know, birch for the log, if that's right. I don't know, you guys are probably more familiar with trees than I am. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot today. I hope you all have a great holiday season this year. And remember, the Aubergine Chef, demystifying dessert one recipe at a time.